Mr. Shorten, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
Do you think the public has trouble reconciling the Bill Shorten that we just saw in that story, the bloke doing the numbers and so forth, with the collegiate team player that's the image you've sought to portray in the election campaign?
Well, I noticed in the interview that you had Nikki Sava, who's a Conservative commentator, getting 5 cracks at me. She's not going to vote for Labor, so I put her views to one side.
Sean
Let's go to the heart of the... No, I appreciate it.
Let's
appreciate... Well, used to be. Let's go to the heart of the matter. Wherever I go in Australia, Australians are telling me they want to vote for change. I'm getting a great reception. We're getting a great reception because my United team, which I've helped build over the last 6 years, has learned lessons, and we're going to take real action on climate change. We're going to tackle the problem of low wages growth. We're going to tackle the issue of cost of living for working mums. So wherever I go, I'm finding a pretty good reaction.
Labor's promising a lot of new spending, and I want to be crystal clear for voters. Is all that spending contingent on you getting your savings reforms through the Senate?
Well, first of all, you'd have seen that Labor's presented the most detailed policy platform that an opposition's presented in many, many elections. And we've got a great set of books. And what we're doing is we are proposing tax reforms. I'm not only confident that we'll get our reforms through the Senate, but we've also allocated within our much better set of books for the nation a very healthy surplus. So a particular measure doesn't sink or swim our policy proposals because we've done the homework.
So you'll keep the spending proposals but have a lower surplus, if I understand what you just said correctly?
No, what I said is we're going to fight to get our proposals through the Senate. But of course your question presupposes that we win on Saturday, and that's my focus. And the case which we put to Australians, which I put today in Blacktown, is this economy is not working in the interests of working middle-class people, and we've had a very chaotic and divided government.
But I just want to be completely upfront with Australian voters about whether you will drop any of the promises you've made, the spending promises you've made, if you can't get your reform package through the Senate. And I just want to be clear that I'm understanding correctly that what you're saying is you'll keep those spending promises, but you'll pull the money from the surplus if you have to.
No, what you asked me earlier was did our policies to help make the lives of Australians better depend upon getting every Senate reform through. The reality is we have a big buffer, a very big buffer. But let's go to the heart of the matter. What you're raising is the spectre of a right-wing Senate, Palmer and One Nation, who survive off Liberal preferences being able to block our measures in the Senate. If we get elected on Saturday, if our program for real change, climate change and the rest, cost of living measures like childcare, pension and dental, what we'll be able to do is claim a mandate. Now, mandate's a term used a lot by political commentators, but I think in this case, the fact that we've been so upfront with the people of Australia, I mean, we've got a plan for change to take Australia into the 2020s. All the government's got is a scare campaign.
But if it's not a decisive victory, is it really a mandate?
Well, first of all, we've put forward our policies. Let's see how we go on Saturday. I'm feeling optimistic, and I think the reception which I've seen our ideas receive around Australia means that I think the time is right for a change. People, I feel shortchanged by the current government, who haven't really put forward any policies at all, and they've only put forward their costings today. We've got a costed plan, but it's about the trifecta of politics. Well, better tax cuts for 10 million people, tick. Reversing the cuts to schools and hospitals, tick. And a better surplus. And that is a plan with a mandate.
You say they've not put forward any policy. They did actually put forward a policy on the weekend, the first home buyers policy, which Labor immediately adopted. Were you aware at the time that it hadn't been modelled by Treasury?
Well, first of all, when you're defending the government saying they put forward a policy, their policy is for 10,000 people. Hundreds of thousands of houses get bought and sold every year.
But were you aware it hadn't been modelled by Treasury?
But I'm just coming to the point where you assert the government has a policy. This is a modest policy. And so to that extent, we had a good look at it. We can fit it in the garage of our ideas about housing reform. There's plenty of space. If the government hasn't done all the homework, then if we get elected, we'll make sure that the idea can stack up.
But you've said you're going to adopt it, though, so are you adopting it or not? Now you're saying you check if it stacks up.
No. What I've said is that we have got the capacity within our broader housing policies for renters, for first home buyers, to be able to take this idea and implement it. What we'll do, if we get elected, is make the idea work. I mean, you're right. this feeble attempt from the government, as you could tell, or no, maybe you're not saying it, but most experts are saying this government's rushing around for a single positive idea in this election, and it looked like, this was a bit of an afterthought from a government who's let first home buyers languish for the last 6 years.
Are you hoping that your suite of policies will drive down housing prices in Australia?
No, our policies are not about driving prices in a particular direction. They're about levelling the playing field for first home buyers, one. Because it isn't really fair, is it, Lee, that a first home buyer couple goes along on a Saturday to an auction and they're competing against a property investor who's getting a government subsidy to make a loss. And to be very clear, because of the shameless scare campaign run by, some of the real estate agents keeping their business models intact, relying on government subsidies, none of our changes on negative gearing are retrospective. So, one, we're going to help home buyers in the future, first home buyers. Two, our changes are not retrospective, we're reforming negative gearing. And three, there's a whole group of people who this government never really talks about. It's the people who can't afford to buy their own home. And we've got measures to assist them with social housing too.
Let's turn to a subject that's barely been raised during the election campaign, which is foreign policy. How do you view the main plank of China's foreign policy, which is the Belt and Road policy to expand its influence politically and economically throughout the region?
Well, that's China's foreign policy, it's not ours. We start from the position that our security alliance with the United States is our paramount friendship. But I did notice that the current government and the current Prime Minister said that we don't have to choose between our friends, meaning America, and our customers, meaning China.
No, but I'm not asking about that.
No,
I'm asking about the Labor Party in government. You say it's China's foreign policy. I'm asking Labor's foreign policy. How would you view that activity?
Sorry, I answered that in the first sentence. I said we'll have our own foreign policy, not China's. And what I'm doing
how will you respond to that?
That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you the context of our response, because the great rivalry which you're alluding to is the one between China and the United States. And the question is, how does a nation like Australia, with our traditional ongoing ties of security, work with China? And then what I was getting to the point about was this. We need to weigh up and look at China and North Asia and other Asian economies and societies, not just through the prism of either threat or customer. I think we need to be more sophisticated. So in terms of the Belt and Road Initiative, we will not sign up to anything which in any way compromises Australia's national independence or our foreign policy objectives.
On that same point, I guess, looking at it from the other way, the US has traditionally been Australia's closest ally. Given Donald Trump's track record of lies and exaggeration, how will you deal with him on a leader-to-leader basis?
Well, you can make those judgments about the US president.
I think they're a matter of fact, actually.
Sure, that's what you say. But my point is this. I'm running for Prime Minister, not compere of the 7:30 report. So the way I will do it is professionally. Again, I will make sure we pursue Australia's foreign policy with an Australian accent, with our interests.
But as I say, how will you deal with somebody, though, who has a track record of...
It's not for me to pick up who the American people pick, just like it's not for the Americans or any other country to decide who our leader is.
No, but he is who he is. So how will you deal with him? How will you negotiate with him?
Professionally and pragmatically.
But is he going to be a trustworthy partner?
America has been a close ally of ours. What people expect from their Prime Minister, in my opinion, is that I behave professionally, that I prepare, and I work out what Australia's long-term interests are. I've got 30 years of negotiation. Who the other team send as their negotiator isn't for me to pick. What I've got to do is define our interests and work out how I achieve our interests. And that's something I've been doing for 30 years. You
and some of your team have been critical of News Limited's coverage of the federal election and of Labor during the campaign. How influential do you think newspapers are in 2019? And is media diversity in Australia something that you would look at in government?
I do support greater media diversity, and I've become concerned about the shrinking number of operators in our media market, and I've said that. But I also recognise that you've got the new platforms which make it harder for traditional media to compete with. And there's a third issue. It's properly funding the ABC. Now, I don't expect you to comment on whether or not you agree with our policies, but I am disturbed that this government's cut $83.7 million from the ABC. We've said we'll put all of that back in. And what's more is because Labor believes in a strong national independent public broadcaster, we're putting in more money for drama, for music, for comedy, so that we have more ABC, not less. The Prime Minister's religious beliefs have been a matter of some focus in this election. What do you say to the suggestion that you've sought to politicise his faith by insinuating, for example, that he suggested gay people are going to hell when he didn't say that? No, that's not what happened. Let's be very clear. The Prime Minister was asked a question a couple of times, which he didn't answer. Are gay people going to hell? I've not at any stage spoken about his religion.
But it's highlighting that. No, sorry, can I just want to get to the point. He viewed the fact that you raised it as politicising his faith.
Well, he would say that, wouldn't he? But that's not what happened. The reality is I didn't ask him not to answer that question. I do respect the right to religious freedom. I do respect freedom of speech. But I also respect that just as religion's part of someone's identity, so is their sexuality. I make no judgment about people who have no faith or practice whatever faith. If you're Prime Minister, though, I truly believe that we've got to create an inclusive society where people are able to express their identity within the realms of the law without any persecution. What happened is that I simply thought a Prime Minister should make it clear that they don't think that gay people are going to go to hell.
On the point about inclusion and the right to religious freedom, say if in office Labor did strengthen Australia's anti-discrimination laws, for example, to protect LGBTI kids in religious schools, how will that not limit the rights of Christian schools to teach their fundamental beliefs?
Well, I think using exemptions to the anti-discrimination legislation is a lazy form of employing people and treating people. I think that we are capable, though, of creating reform which allows schools to teach the faith that they believe in according to the values which they hold. I don't think this problem is actually too hard. And I certainly accept that if we're to make sure we strengthen protections against people because of their sexual identity being discriminated against, at the same time we've got to respect the right of schools, for example, religious schools, to teach the faith they believe in. I'll be able to work on that. The Law Reform Commission's looking at that. I've met with both sides of the debate. What I will bring to the job is a view that we're all in this together. I don't think schools want to treat little kids badly, but I also don't think that we should be relying on outmoded forms of exemptions to discrimination law. What I'll bring to Australia in 2019 is a modern way of thinking which respects faith, but also respects people's identity in other ways.
If you lose on Saturday night, is it the end of your political career?
That's about the fourth time you've used the hypothetical. If this happens, if that happens, I'll tell you what.
You must have given it some thought, Mr. Shorten.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm a very focused person. I'm focused on getting as many votes as possible on Saturday. We can have that conversation after 6 p.m. But what concerns me more than what happens to me is what happens to this country. We've got to take real action on climate. It's not right that inequality is growing in this country. It's not right that wages are stagnating. It's not right that pensioners are waiting to can't afford to get dental care. It's not right that people who are diagnosed with cancer in the fight of their life aren't getting the help. The system's not free. So for me, it's not about me. My team's united, and I can promise Australians that we won't see the chaos of the last 6 years, and we've proven that we've learned our lesson because of our unity of the last 6 years. It's
not about you, as you say, but nonetheless, for any human being, when they're on the cusp of potentially being the Prime Minister, that is a very big thing.
Yes,
what
it is.
Scares you the most about winning on Saturday night?
Winning doesn't scare me. What scares me is not fulfilling the hopes and dreams of millions of our people. What scares me is when parents go to work and they have one of their two salaries chewed up by childcare. What scares me is that you might die of cancer because you're poor. What scares me is that black kids in this country are more likely to go to jail than university. What scares me is you might have women who are the victims of family violence who have to stay in an abusive relationship because this country hasn't worked out where they can stay.
Bill Shorten, you agreed to do 2 interviews during the campaign. You've honoured that. We very much appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you very much, Lee. Have a lovely evening.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.